Die, demon, scientist, bloke. Damn it. Oh, hello, and welcome to The Point. And apologies in advance, actually, to everyone over the age of 20 for the following sentence. But this Sunday, August 3rd, Doom 3 is 10 years old. So with all this talk about Doom 4, aka Doom, what better time to go back, play this classic, and see how it stacks up after a decade of maturing. Or rotting. First of all, some historical context. By the time id Software released Doom 3, it had been almost 4 years since their previous release, the fantastic Quake 3 Arena. Quake 3 had rewritten the rulebook for first-person games, discarding the campaign mode to focus entirely on arena combat, and there was similar pressure within gaming circles for Doom 3 to do something as revolutionary. Right now, it's been 10 years since Doom 3 was released, and the same was true then. Doom 2 was released in September 1994, less than 12 months after the release of the first game, so it's fair to say that fans were anticipating the latest chapter, and though we didn't know it then, it signified the closing of a chapter for id. In fact, when you play Doom 3 today, it's impossible to think about it outside of its place within gaming history. And that happens right from the off. Doom 3 opens with a shooting-free introductory level which establishes the location and some story beats. This experience is pretty tried in first-person shooters nowadays, but it was an interesting evolution for Doom, a series like most vanilla first-person games in the 90s that had you laying waste to enemies almost immediately. Though games like System Shock and other RPG titles had introductory levels, it wasn't until Half-Life's classic intro in 1998 that it became a staple of the genre. It's the old trick of showing you a place on a normal day so that when the catastrophe hits you have a context for just how bad things have gotten. And it's when it all goes wrong that Doom 3 reminds you it's a Doom game. The original Doom games were quick draw exercises. Imps, pinky demons and zombie men would pop up behind walls and ambush you. You were always on your toes. The sounds of imps growling and snorting could be heard all around, almost like they were in your head. And when the shit goes down in Doom 3, it's a similar experience. Enemies pop out of dark corners as your radio is constantly filled with the haunting screams of your fellow Marines. You frantically pant across the surface of the planet while lights blow out and terrifying skulls scream through corridors. This is the essence of Doom. Sure, you're fighting zombie soldiers and evil creatures, but unlike enemies in other games, there's something far more disturbing. Like the zombies in System Shock 2 and the ever-tangible presence of Shodan, the zombies and demons in Doom are far more than just beasts that see you lesser in the natural order of things. They feel evil, compelled personally to rip you apart, almost visibly angered by your mere existence. And that's a feeling that Doom 3 retains throughout its campaign. Sadly though, your ability to dispatch these guys means that many of the early bad guys become cannon fodder pretty early on. The original game got around this using quantity, and this is where Doom 3 ultimately falls short. The original games were corridor crawlers, but they often opened up into wider areas with hordes of bad guys to kill. Doom 3 never really does this, and it makes the spawning points of the enemies, their monster closets, incredibly predictable, and variation in combat is kept to a minimum. In fact, it also inhibits you from using many of the larger weapons, as there's a good chance you're going to splash damage yourself into an early grave, or at least the idea that you might stops you from wanting to use them. It's a bit of a shame, as some of the best moments in the early games came from unleashing a BFG into a distant pack of pinkies. So why did Doom 3 focus on smaller areas? Well, because ultimately, Doom 3 was a graphical showcase. When this game came out in 2004, it was the best looking game ever made, period. As tight as the areas were, they were incredibly detailed, had believable physics, the bad guys were incredibly well animated, and it had some of the best lighting effects ever seen in games. Remember, Half-Life 2 was still a couple of months away. Doom 3 attempted to be a much more atmospheric game than its predecessors, and in some ways it did achieve this. The flashlight could only be used in sacrifice of holding a weapon, which irked many players, but it made diving into dark areas that much more tense. But if you didn't enjoy it, you could just download the duct tape mod that would stick a flashlight to your gun, or take the edge off completely with the Hello Kitty flashlight. I still find this entire opening sequence absolutely terrifying in 2014. The whole campaign is a little bit longer than I remembered. It's actually around the 17-hour mark. And for me personally, I'm not sure what it's like playing this for the first time, but this is like going to a theme park of nostalgia. At the time, I remember being amazed by the interface on doors and computers. I loved the new models for many of the larger enemies. The new terrifying Pinky Demon looked and moved incredibly. I've got fond memories of Doom 3, and so do id. To date, it's still their highest selling game and serves as an inflection point for both them and the genre. Doom 3 was a by-the-numbers first-person shooter that was elevated by a wonderful engine that made it genuinely atmospheric. For me, 2004 marked the end of the golden age of single-player first-person shooters. A number of months later, with with the release of Half-Life 2, and Doom 3 surely marked the end of the golden age of id Software. Though id Tech 4 could be seen in games like Prey and Brink, Unreal Engine absolutely trounced them in the third-party engine wars. And with so many big names leaving id, production on some of their biggest titles were outsourced. Raven Software led development on Quake 4, which the least is said about the better, while Enemy Territory Quake Wars from Splash Damage never had mainstream success. And remember Rage? Yeah, I bet you forgot about Rage. id Software are absolutely the most important name in the history of first-person game design, but it's been a tough decade for them. Both themselves and their various IPs are now under the stewardship of Bethesda Softworks, whose management of the most recent Wolfenstein game, developed by Machine Games, has resulted in arguably the best Wolfenstein game ever made. My hope is that this latest Doom, which has currently only been seen by fans at QuakeCon behind closed doors, can do something similar as Wolfenstein. But in the meantime, because it's probably going to be a long time before we actually ever get to see that for ourselves, why not go back and play Doom 3 for, if nothing else, to remind yourself of just how exciting first-person shooters were a decade ago. And how they didn't have autosave. Like, oh Jesus Christ! Yeah, this is like crazy dynamic shadows. Can I jump down there and see the shadows even better? No. Jesus Christ! No time. The one problem with these imps is you basically figured out that they had, like, they never threw the fire where you were going to be. They always threw it where you were. So I feel like they were only put in to like teach you how to strafe. Or remind you how to strafe. Look at this. Remember this lighting? Oh, Jesus. Get away from me. I'm trying to show the lighting. Oh, look, it's a PDA. This is my favorite part about Doom right now. Is that instead of, in lieu of using different colored keys, they just use iPads. Oh, they didn't use iPads because in 2004 they used PDAs. Look at that thing. I got the PDA. Downloading PDA. Grant Baston. I bet he left a wonderful audio log, and I bet he also had access to a room that I need to go to.